I work hard for my results, and I need my diet dialed in. The RP Diet app tells me what to eat to keep me on track and offers suggestions for changes based on my responses, giving me the freedom to choose my path. A personal digital diet coach for less than $15 a month? Yeah, that works.
Folks, welcome back to the weekly webinar. Dr. James here with my colleague and best bud, Dr. Mike. How are we doing?
Decent. How are you?
About the same. Though I did just download Doom Eternal, which I'm very stoked to.
What is that?
It's they kind of softly rebooted the Doom franchise, like the old, and they've made it like one of the most hyper-violent things that has ever come to be. So I'm very excited to get some of my lockdown stressors out. So that'll be fun. But other than that, a lot of the same. Real quick, folks, we're going to try something a little bit new in the coming weeks. I'm going to do another kind of similar to our weekly webinar show where I'm going to tackle just some very, very sports-specific questions. So if you guys have questions on training for sports specifically or periodization or anything along those lines, you can go ahead and start popping them into this week's weekly webinar comments. Just go ahead and fill those in, and then I'll start compiling those, and I'll probably start doing another web series where I'll answer your sports-specific questions, and then I'll actually do some training plans on the fly for kind of strength conditioning, sport periodization type stuff. Think Bob Ross, Joy of Painting style. So I have kind of like a template. I'll build some programs. You can watch me do it. I'll answer some questions. So if you guys have any sports-specific questions you want me to tackle for you, go ahead and put them into the comments section on this video, and I will start compiling them. Other than that, Mike, you ready to hit things off here?
You bet.
All right. Well, we'll get to it.
Okie dokie. Let me begin with Mark Anthony, the famous singer.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Dr. Mike and James. I'm currently headed back to school to earn my degree in sports and exercise science because of Jared Feather and you guys relighting my passion. That's really cool.
Cool.
What is the number one tip that you guys each personally recommend to your younger selves if you're redoing your academics again? Study very hard, get the best grades you can. Only 100% is 100%. Learn as much as possible, and you will end up doing really well.
That's a tough one because I would have redone so many things, but at the same time, when you think about redoing things, you wonder if you would have come to the same places that you have come to be, right? So I don't know, but I think what Mike said is really good. I would definitely start thinking about like specific questions that you want to answer, things that actually interest you rather than kind of going with the flow. I think part of you getting your education is like learning how to solve real world problems, things that actually exist in the world rather than just, a lot of academics is kind of like intellectual masturbating. So kind of getting yourself out of that. But there's definitely a lot of that goes on, and there's definitely a good reason for that, but also go to school with the expectation and the mindset of like, there are some things that I really would like to do in the real world. How do I kind of go about addressing them and figuring out how to learn more about them?
Yep. Good stuff. Number 2, besides RP Plus, are there any other resources, books, etc., that you each personally recommend for those coming up in the field of sports and exercise science? Yes, I would recommend you sign up for the Weightology Review, James Krieger's weightology.net website. It's super cheap, and he does a review that is continually updated all the time with new studies on a bunch of stuff, dieting, fat loss, health, hypertrophy, and it's just super, super valuable. I would highly recommend that.
So it's kind of hard not to shamelessly plug our books, but I will plug our books for sure, and then I will secondarily say, if you read our books, we are very diligent about putting a lot of great references in those books, so you can look in through the reference sections, and there's lots of really, really great textbooks that you can find inside our reference sections of our books, and our books are pretty great too. Another shameless plug is for my book with Bompa, and all of the Bompa books are really good. So integrated periodization, and then any of the other periodization theory, methodology of training, all those are really good. Basically all the ones that we reference every goddamn time are always good places to start.
For sure. All right. Joseph Heslop says, hi guys, I always struggle, I'm sure like many, to accurately gauge the feeling of 2 RIR, 3 RIR, and so on. To be honest, the only time I'm sure of how many reps I have left in the tank is at 0 RIR, like if I go back down, I ain't coming up. I try to be thoughtful and focus on mind-muscle connection, rep consistency, and general self-awareness, but for some reason I just can't get RIR right. I follow the RP diet app and my sleep is consistently good, so there are no widely varying lifestyle nutrition factors throwing my judgment. My question is, can I place a single set into my mesocycle for each lift where I max out a definitive 0 IR and then base mesocycle progression 3 RIR, 2 RIR, and so off a recently tested max, fresh data? Okay, my first answer would be no, but let's see where we go from that. Thought about 2 ways of implementing this rep max test. A, at the start of a mesocycle, where the rest of the mesocycle can be calculated from the initial max. Downside, this could mess up SFR due to mesocycle, perhaps having each exercise in week 1 with the first set at 0 IR, and subsequent sets at the appropriate 3 RIR. So problem number 1, I'm just going to say this now because it's less to remember to get ahead. If you can't gauge 3 RIR, how the fuck are you supposed to find the subsequent sets at 3 RIR? Remember, fatigue by itself means that you almost certainly won't get the same reps. So for example, your 0 RIR first set might be 12 reps. That doesn't mean that 9 on the second set is 3 RIR.
Right.
That means it might be 0 RIR or 1 or 2. So this doesn't solve a problem, unfortunately. But let's keep going real quick. So the 0 IR would disrupt the fatigue accumulation and stimulus progression of a typical mesocycle. The answer is it wouldn't disrupt it a ton if it's just 1 set. If you're a very advanced athlete, I would say it would. But I don't think it's a huge deal. It's definitely a deal. It's great that you're considering it. I don't think it's a big deal. James, anything to say about just point A?
Yeah, one last thing is generally you don't want to start you generally don't want to start a mesocycle or a session doing the hardest thing. That's generally not the way to go about it. So especially on the session-to-session basis, if you start by, day 1, week 1 of each thing, you basically are training to failure. What are you realistically going to be doing the rest of the time? You're going to be doing kind of this shitty submax training at that point. So
it's better to flip it around probably and fail on your last set of an exercise.
Exactly. And I think he's probably coming around to that here, I'm guessing, and B.
Okay. At the end of the mesocycle, where the max set would be used to calculate the next mesocycle, downsides you will fatigue at the end of the meso as you approach or you are at MRV, and the rep max may not be representative for the next meso. Okay, it should be, but we'll get to that in a sec. Also, you may not be doing that exercise in the next meso anyway due to exercise rotation. It's a very good point. I'm an engineer by trade, so I have an obsessive need to attach maths. He's from not the United States. We never say maths in the United States. We either say math or mathematics. Maths to everything and have a hard time listening to my body, though I do try. I would love to be able to set my mesocycle up by doing preliminary calculations for IR, rep degradations with successive sets and proximity to MRV, and would just help with the IR part. Okay, you're never going to get ecologically valid data for successive set degradation, so you can just stop right there. It's never going to happen. Depends on too many variables, and it's different for every muscle, different for every exercise, different for every rep range. Then he says, thanks for your time. I hope I communicated my question well. Joe, you communicated it excellently. What I would recommend for you, and we'll see what James thinks about this, is something that James and I have been doing ourselves for forever. It was sort of just naturally do it, but we haven't communicated it a ton to the public because we like to communicate theoretically with practical advice, but not get too bogged down into what we do, because what we do matches the theory really well, but it's a little bit intricate, and which is probably just a short. We'll talk about it in the upcoming hypertrophy book, but if we made it our whole thing, it would just cause a bunch of questions that needlessly took away from what's actually going on. So here's what James and I do. James and I shoot for 2 to 4 RIR on microcycle 1. We get certain reps 10, 7, 5. The next time we do it, if we keep the weight the same, we try to add a rep. And the next time we do it, if we increase the weight by 2.5 kilos or 5 kilos, we just try to have the reps be the same. So based on how fast adaptation occurs, basically you're guaranteed to at least hit 3 or 4 RIR because fitness goes up, but fatigue goes up as well. And then as you keep adding weight, necessarily your RIR has to decline. So unless you were wildly off, 6 RIR or 1 RIR, I sure hope to God you can tell the difference between those two. If you're anywhere between 2 and 4 RIR, all you got to do is match reps if the weight is going up slowly and steadily, or add reps 1 rep at a time when you feel you can add a rep. And if you feel okay, if I do another rep, I'm going to go to failure and the plan is 2 RIR, well, then you just did a good estimate of 2 RIR. So don't fucking add a rep, right? So essentially, by the matching and beating protocol or sort of logical loop, all we have to do is try to get a reasonable guess at RIR once. And then the rest of the mesocycle is a self-solving problem. which automatically takes you lower and lower and lower until you can't match. And then, super good point, you know where your MRV is because you're like, oh, I couldn't match this week. And here's the thing. Variations will occur. So some weeks, you matching reps was really like a 1 RIR. It was a bad week, you didn't get enough sleep, but the next week you get more sleep, it was good. Then matching reps is like 1 RIR again, but you more weight on the bar. You're like, whoa, I overperformed. Like, that's great. But you're not going to be able to do that week after week after week. So if you get anywhere near the 2 to 4 RIR, even like the fucking 2 to 5 RIR range at the beginning of a meso, inevitably, with rep and or weight increases, you will hit 0 RIR, and huge benefit, you'll probably hit it really, really slowly, way better than trying to target 3 RIR the first week, then target 2 RIR the second. That's fucking hard. Target 1 RIR, like, it gets easier as you get closer to failure, but man, it's tough to have to think about that all the time. Then you end up second guessing yourself a bunch, like, fuck, I feel like I had more reps. Like, did you hit 10? Yes. What did you hit 2 weeks ago? 10. What about last week? 10. Was the weight then lighter? Yep, this is that basically a PR within the mesocycle. You're fucking golden. Either, here's the thing, and James will get a chuckle out of this one. You keep getting stronger forever, or you'll hit failure like you're supposed to at the end of the mesocycle. That's it.
Self-solving problem. Yeah, those are all really good points. A couple other things I would add. So if I was to pick one of those two strategies, I would do kind of more towards the latter, where maybe you pick one set at the end of the mesocycle where you're like, all right, we're going to actually go 0, RIR and really train to
doing that anyway at the end of a meso, by the way.
But like really, really going for it more than so you really have a good gauge of what that is. But I wouldn't do it in the beginning. Also, if you were to put a gun to my head, right, and I think Mike would largely feel the same way, and said like, what is the difference or what is the margin of error and the impact of that error in assessing 2 RIR versus 3 RIR? Or it's like, oh man, I don't fucking know. It's like, even if you're fucking it up, you're probably okay as long as, like Mike said, as long as it's not like 6 RIR, right? So as long as you're kind of in the ballpark, you're probably doing just fine.
And the match or beat thing takes care of all of that, even if you fucked it up.
Exactly. So we as scientists, we do like to do quantitative scaling. Like we like to say, here's the densities that we're working with, either the weight on the bar or RIR or percentage of max. And we like to, have numerical representations of those things, but man, there's a pretty big fudge factor there as well. So as long as you're not really like wildly overdoing it, which would be like training to failure all the time, or wildly underdoing it, which is like just leaving so many reps in the tank, you're probably fine.
Yeah. The cool thing is about the match or beat concept is it's automatically a built-in MRV detector that can't fail you. So people will say, like, use pure RIR, and they'll say, okay, 2 RIR this week, right? And then it'll be like 4 or 5 reps off of their last week's numbers. But they'll be like, well, I guess I just didn't get enough sleep. But then they think in the back of their head, maybe I'm just being a bitch and maybe my 2 RIR calculation was wrong. As soon as you have your baseline first week of the meso hit, all the other weeks, like, you have to match or beat. And if you can't, you're over MRV, right? That's it. So you look at the sheet, and it's because people will say, like, the autoregulation can be taken too far. People say autoregulate everything. Everything's RIR. A big problem in powerlifting is when people do the RPE adjusted training way too excessively, where they're like, all right, I got to hit an RPE 7 with this band chain squat. Like, what the fuck is that? What is that, bro? Who knows?
Well, it was like RPE 2 at the beginning of the movement, but then RPE 9 at the end of the movement, right?
Right, for sure. Better, it was like, what did you do the band chain squat with last time? So I did 315 with blue bands and 6 chains, and I did that for a set of 5. Okay, great. Why don't you do a set of 5 this time? Put 325 on the bar. Like, well, how do I know if it's the right RP? Was everything is progressing as it should be? It'll be the right one. If it's not, then you'll very quickly find out that it was way too hard of a session, and you can at least make the adjustments versus your sessions being like hard, easy. This sort of moves them up and up, and if you can hang, you can hang. If you can't, that's a problem you're going to have by yourself.
Yeah. Good question. That was an interesting one.
Very good question. All right. Daniel Hacker says, do you think there's any use in adding extra intensity techniques or gut punchers in the overreaching week before a deload on top of the pre-planned set by set? Set by rep weight requirements? I don't mean going overboard by adding something crazy elaborate. Simple example might be, instead of, say, doing 3 by 10, 8-7 with a certain weight on exercise, I may be saying, okay, instead of that, I'm going to make a rep target of 30 reps of this load instead of just 3 sets. I don't understand how that. Well, I guess it does make it a little harder.
So he's making it like, okay, so then it becomes like a giant set kind of thing.
Right, which might make it easier, but we'll talk about that in a sec. So another example.
Or like myo reps, maybe.
Yeah. Another example may be a set of walking lunges to failure at the end of a leg workout. You normally wouldn't do them. I don't like that because it introduces new exercise and both fucks up your variation, and also introducing a new exercise when you're really, really fatigued can introduce movement patterns that slightly increase the risk of injury. A giant set of weighted chins instead of sets and rep sets, a set of failure close grip push-ups. These are just generic examples, but you see what I mean. There's a bit of masochist in all of us, maybe overreaching week. We can allow it to come out just a bit because we're deloading next week anyway. I would like to further add to this point. Would you answer change depending on what phase of the macrocycle you're in? I mean, if what you're doing is a meso 3 mass phase followed by mini cut or maintenance, or a meso 3 meso cut followed by maintenance, would something or what I'm suggesting not be appropriate in the first 1 or 2 mesos? Maybe have some utility in overreaching week in that third meso. Yeah, probably have more utility in a mass than a cut, and probably more utility in the later meso than earlier. And then it says in practice, the last week would be capped by an extended period of time of high volume training. So it would be right to say that's the week you really got buck wild, arguably even more so in the previous overreaching weeks, and take yourself to the utmost degree. So my answer is I think it's probably an okay thing to do to feed your soul, so to speak. But if I was doing strictly what worked best, I would just stick to the plan and do more straight shit. A lot of times in my own personal situation, I find out that I'm so fatigued by that last week. A lot of times I'll alter the plan just to do something different and novel and intense, but it ends up being volume and intensity wise not nearly as much as just progressing straight through. So I'm not a big fan of it, but I think it's fine. And just make sure you do it safely and don't go way, way overboard or do something super different. And make sure that whatever translation you make is definitely more of a stimulus by just a small margin than what you did. And the thing is, if you're back to that, okay, it needs to be more of a stimulus by a small margin. Why do extra shit that's different? It's fun, and that's okay, but you got to trade off between fun and effect at some point.
Yeah, I've actually messed around with this idea maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, Daniel, just for the same curiosity that you have now. And really all I found was that it would just degrade into fuckery very quickly, where it's just like, what am I even doing at this point? You know, I probably should have just done more either throughout the mesocycle. Maybe I was underestimating my, underestimating my MRVs, or maybe I could have just done more sets of something else. Like it was one of those things where I always left feeling like, well, that was stupid. And it seems like I should have just done what I intended to do the first time around. So I hear you. I definitely have that same curiosity. I have never been able to implement it in a way that I thought was efficacious, and certainly not better than just doing more of the same kind of stuff that you usually are doing. So that's kind of where I left off with my personal experimentation on that. So I would say
Agreed.
Probably not a good use of your time.
Do you think unilateral exercises should not be done with many sets because of the STR, stimulus of time, that I think that's the acronym? Yep, correct. I find they get a ton of unilateral exercises, mainly for legs, but my God, they take forever and they're hard as heck. I likely could recover from more, but the time it takes to do them, do one leg rest because it's hard, do the other rest again. Makes you question its efficacy despite the fact that it feels hard. I do get good pumps. I know we shouldn't chase volume for volume's sake, but I just find that despite the fact that I can recover from more, the time it takes to do more just doesn't seem worth it for me in practice. 2 to 4 sets per leg is the most I seem to get done. Have you guys found this with yourself and clients? Overwhelmingly, yes. Daniel, I think you're onto something really big, and that's what we have 2 indices, the SFR and STR, stimulus to fatigue ratio and stimulus to time ratio, and they don't always line up. Now, there's a meta-index called the SFTR, which you could just it's super easy to run because you just divide everything by everything and you get it, and that sort of gives you like a really like combination of what's the best bang for your buck and bang for your fatigue exercise. But that unfortunately is not the greatest index because it misses a lot of in-between stuff. So for example, how many people are really constrained by both fatigue and time? Very few. CrossFitters are constrained by time. People who are super busy constrained by time. And they're usually so far under their MRVs that fatigue's not even remotely, because that's why they can superset deadlifts to shoulder press. You know, people who are constrained by fatigue usually are, very involved folks, competitive bodybuilders, and they can take all the time they need. But you are pointing out a very interesting thing that I've been through myself, of like people do like, why don't you do like one arm bicep curls and one arm lateral raises? Or like I've seen people do, and it's apparently a very good exercise. Daniel Jolly does it, the one leg press. And Daniel does it because it's like the only thing that fits him, and the regular leg press just sucks. I fucking hate all that shit personally for myself because it fucking takes a zillion fucking years. And that to me reduces my SFR because I just get so much central fatigue after being in the gym for forever. I'm like, fuck this.
You know,
So
even like one arm dumbbell rows, sometimes I'm just like, God damn it.
100%. Yeah.
It takes forever.
So, yeah, I'm lucky to be strong enough now that most gyms just don't have one arm dumbbell rows for me to use in any reasonable rep range. But I'm like, thank God, because that exercise, it takes a while, right? And there's other exercises like, so like a really good exercise is the rear foot elevated split squat, especially if you have a heel on your front foot. I mean, it's fucking baller, right? I just don't fucking do it because why do one leg at a time when I can get on the leg press, do both, fuck my shit up, and all of a sudden it's great. So I would say, Daniel, I think you're making a proper calculation. I would just make sure you're filling in your volume requirements with something more time efficacious. So like maybe you get a ton out of single leg work, a decent amount out of double leg work. Don't leave volume on the table, period. If you can recover from it and benefit, you should still do it because you want max gains. So maybe that means for you, start with the single leg stuff or start with the leg presses or front squats or something, and then do as many of that other exercise, double leg, as needs to fill in the gap. So if you're only willing to do 2 or 3 sets on time constraint of single leg stuff, make sure your double leg stuff is taking up the slack. Don't just do like one more set of the single leg stuff than you maybe wanted to, take a fuck zillion amount of time and still underhit your volume. Make sure that doesn't happen. But otherwise, yeah, I think there's definitely a trade-off there, James.
Yeah, I tend to be a little bit polarized on the SFR and STR, where I kind of feel like if you are you're training for one or the other, right? You're training to either get the most out that you can in the time constrictions that you have, or you're not as constricted by time, so you're trying to get the best out of your training that you can. And I would say probably just more distinctly biasing towards one or the other is probably the best bet rather than trying to meet in the middle more often than not. There are certainly times where I could see trying to find a happy medium might be useful, but I think...
Can I say something real quick, James?
Yeah.
I think the SFTR combined index ranking is much better at excluding completely retarded exercise than it is at ranking effect. Like if something sucks bad on the SFTR, it just fucking sucks.
It sucks.
Like it either doesn't have an SFR that even brings it into the STR side to be justified. It's another way of asking, like, for how quick this exercise is it remotely stimulative to fatiguing? If the answer is no, it's like kettlebell swings, super quick, don't do shit, right? Like something like that. So a bad SFTR, bad news. A good one, there could be better SFRs or better STRs depending on what you're looking for.
Right. And so that's just my opinion. I'm not trying to tout that as the correct way. So to me, it's more of like a flow chart where it's like, is time constricted? Yes or no, right? If it's yes, then you go STR. If it's no, then you go SFR. That's my take on it. You don't have, take it or leave it. But I would say if you're not constricted by time, pick the ones that are best bang for your buck in terms of mind, muscle, pump, soreness, all that stuff. Don't worry about the time factor as much.
Give me one quick second, James. This is from an already existing RP Plus lecture.
Oh, boy.
And if I may share my screen.
Yeah.
Ta-da!
There you go.
So does this work? Slideshow. So you ask, how high is your MRV, right? And then you ask, how much time can you train? Are you like allotted for training? If you have a ton of MRV, like you're a college student who's like 18 and you have cafeteria food and you can train forever because you're a college student, you have fucking dick to do after you do your homework, you just go for high raw stimulus magnitude exercises, right? Especially if you're a hard gainer. It's like college students are like, oh yeah, deadlift has a poor SFR. Shut the fuck up, deadlift, you asshole. You need a big back. You don't need to worry about fatigue. You're never going to feel that shit for 3 years. If your MRV is a limiting factor, but you have a lot of time to train, like James was saying, you want to go for high SFR exercises. If you can't train for a long time, but relative to how much time you can train, you don't have to worry about fatigue ton. You have to go for high STR, stimulus to time ratio exercises, something like CrossFit. And then, of course, high SFTR is if you're constrained on both. But really, these exercises should be like exercises with a decent SFTR should be your default movements anyway. If someone's like got a weird novel exercise that really sucks on this or really sucks on that, it just probably just fucking sucks. And a lot of times the way you get a real bad SFTR is if your raw stimulus magnitude is so low, the time and or the fatigue gobble up any of the fucking points you get there. So
yeah, that was a handy infographic.
Yeah, and the good thing is they're watching this stuff on YouTube, right? So folks can pause it and then look at that,
screenshot it, and steal it from you and post it on there.
Well, true, right? Just replace the RP logos. And I remember James, people used to do that a lot.
People still do that. I still
take a chart, replace RP with their own like fucking cocksucker training, personal training, and it's like, hey, you stole that. And they're like, oh, I love it. You guys made it. We're like, do you understand what giving credit is? And they're like, oh, I don't know. Like, oh yeah, you never went to school. You don't know what plagiarism is.
Yes. It's a funny
All
thing.
right. Martin Kumaru hits us with some big rocks. Hey, docs, shortly after my very productive offseason, where I tried my hand at metabolite phase, low rest, 10 to 15 reps, high volume, and I superset as much as I possibly could, I was sadly diagnosed with lactic acidosis, excess buildup of lactic acid causing muscle sprains and other damage in my knees and forearms. This has possibly caused permanent knee damage. On the plus side, the doctor started going into detail about the condition and showing the medical student with him all the signs of it because it had perfect anatomy and definition. That's good.
Okay.
I previously asked questions about my forearms seizing up after training to the point of not being able to move or stretch them, and that was apparently a symptom of that, oddly enough. My knees felt completely fine until I stopped training, stopped due to deload. I was not doing any crazy stuff. For example, for legs, I would superset 250 kilo machine hip thrusts with 3-second hold and 160 kilo deficit sumo deadlifts.
Oof.
Then superset 250 kilo deep leg press with 80 kilo Smith machine squats, taking as much weight off as I needed to keep the reps 10 plus. So I was very surprised when my doctor diagnosed me, considering the crazy shit Mike and many others do, like high rep lunge, squat superset with barely any rest between sets. I was quite amused when the doctor told me that leg pressing 250 kilos for 12 reps was insane. You need to calm down with weight. So your doctor is making a categorically false statement. It's not insane. It's something people do regularly. You need to calm down with the weight is probably bad advice.
Yeah, he's stepping out of his lane a little bit.
He's stepping completely out of his lane. Acidosis is not caused by weight. It's caused by proximity to failure and volume. Anyway, I was wondering if you or someone you know has dealt with lactic acidosis, and if there was anything you did to help prevent it from happening in the future. I'm taking a minimum of 6 weeks off completely from training, as advised by my doctor. Yeah, I absolutely had to get injured. It came at the best time. They were closing all the gyms anyway. But I was wondering if there are things that you have found to be beneficial to help prevent it from happening again. Thank you. So I don't know. So unfortunately, we'd be stepping out of our lanes. From what I understand, lactic acidosis is a full body blood work effect. It is not a localized effect.
Yeah.
In knees or joints, I have no idea how they get lactic acidosis. I think you've probably been misdiagnosed, and I think you should probably go to a different doctor to see if they can confirm it.
I would get a second opinion. And again, I want to stay in my lane here as well. But I definitely am giving it like the people's eyebrow on that.
I don't know what it is. First time I've ever heard of local lactic acidosis.
And I'm not sure. So honestly, I think I would go for a second opinion if it's within your ability to do that, because it seems a little fishy. But I could be wrong. I could be that you might hear back from the other doc and they're like, "Yep, that's totally correct." And James and Mike are dickheads. So and then there you go. But
by the way, if he didn't run lab work on your blood, he can't make that diagnosis. So remember that one. And
I mean, like, I'm just wondering how they come across that, because like you could say like, oh, they could do a lactate stick on any part of your body, like especially if you had just trained.
Lactate doesn't perseverate in tissues, though. It's.
I mean, yeah.
9 out of 10.
Yeah.
If you did blood work and you were ketoacidotic, that's really bad and probably indicative of a whole other shit. Has nothing to do with training. But 9 out of 10 is something's fishy. And
like, I would be curious if it was not like an arthritis type thing, right? Like that would make more sense to me. But again, I'm not that kind of doctor, so I can't quite say.
All right. Best of luck, Martin, and let us know. Sam Schneider says, "Hey, Dr. Mike and Dr. James, I have a question about training at home. I'm an endurance athlete, ultra distance running, cycling that dabbles in hypertrophy work. I don't know why, but big muscles are cool, even though they negatively impact my endurance performance. LOL. Hey, what's the mode of thinking they're cool? I've been working at home with mostly just bodyweight exercises. I found that I can generate enough stimulus in my upper body. Little issue, however, my legs are a different story. I've tried supersetting squats and lunges into some ungodly, sickening workouts. I simply can't get my quads to quit working. It's because you're an ultra athlete. I know we were supposed to go closer to failure with a little rest to these at-home workouts, but my reps are getting into the hundreds, and the sets are lasting 3+ minutes. These workouts leave my legs mildly fatigued the next day, but the brutality of them was mentally draining. Are doing sets in this large even beneficial? Yes, but mildly. Am I simply stimulating my slow twitch fibers by doing so? Yes, but you may be composed of mostly slow twitch fibers anyway. Would it be more beneficial if I could get the reps down to 50 per rep set range? Yes, and the closer to 30 you get, the better. Am I better off crying alone on my couch until I can access heavy weights? I think you should keep doing, whatever weights you have, keep training them, keep yourself limber. But I would stop at maybe about 50 reps, and maybe you can even increase the velocity of the movement and do some like jump squats, full depth jumping squats, and very, very much watch the volume there because it could be very fatiguing in your nervous system and connective tissues. But honestly, I would just invest, now that you're probably under some kind of lockdown or something, just invest more time in the running. Now is the time for you to back off the lifting and push the fucking running and swimming and cycling like crazy, because you can do that shit no problem. And then when you come back, take a little lower volume running, swimming, cycling time and go back to the gym. Because I think for someone of your slow twitch nature, if you don't have a lot of weights at home, yeah, man, I mean, like, you need heavy weight because there's nothing. Your endurance is so good, you're preventing yourself from even accessing your faster twitch fibers with some maximal weight. James?
Yeah, so I think I have two suggestions. The first one would be you could try using some intensification techniques. Like I've experimented with this and I found it to be useful to a point. This is one of those points that it might be useful as an exaggerated mind-muscle connection on some of the movements, especially the quad ones where you're really altering the movement pattern and being like hyper conscientious of each part of the ascent and downward part of the movement. It is kind of mentally draining to do so, but it really does fuck your particular muscles up in a much more significant way than not. Another thing that you could try doing is modifying from, like, if you're just doing regular kind of squats to something like a sissy squat, which is like think of Michael Jackson, like up on your tiptoes, like he style, and leaning back. Normally I don't really recommend those because for a lot of people it can cause like knee issues, but it does put a lot of tension through the quads. And I had a couple people recently who I do one-on-ones with, who I had them switch to that, and they reported like, yeah, that worked really, really good. So sissy squats is maybe a good alternative if you're having a hard time really hitting your quads in particular. Even if you have just like some kind of like a backpack that you can hold on to, or like a weighted vest, or even just like a gallon of water, you can brace with one arm, hold with the other, and those might get the job done. So I would say either modify your mind-muscle connection type activities, or maybe try a different squat variant and see if that works.
Yeah, very good advice. You can also try some myo reps. I don't know if you're doing that already, but once you get to once the rep gets hard, you don't rest for a full amount of time. You just rest for like 1 to 2 seconds, and then keep going to failure again. 1 to 2 seconds, keep going to failure. 1 to 2 seconds, keep going to failure. But if your first set is 100, geez, that's not really it's not that right even.
Yeah, and there's not much you can do to fix it at that point outside of using more weight or just doing a different technique.
Structure and flexibility. The RP Diet app builds a structure of eating that creates the results you're looking for, but has the flexibility to let you scan your favorite foods and follow your preferred diet philosophy. The digital diet coach in your pocket is more powerful than ever, so let's build a better you with the RP Diet app.
All right, Yardan Sanyev says, hey docs, hope you're doing well in these strange times. We are, and I hope you are as well. First, a quick slight clarification about me swapping leg presses, if you happen to remember. I do remember this one. I said I was getting a lot of raw stimulus, but the exercise selection algorithm was indicating I should change it. I realized that was somewhat confusing. I was getting a lot of stimulus, great pumps, and so on, but the fatigue was crazy. I was getting trashed, and for the last meso, I didn't gain rep strength. Very good. That was my reasoning. Great reasoning. It's good that you changed it. Well, now I'm forced to ditch leg pressing, so it doesn't matter.
That sucks.
And yes, you'll pick it up when you come back. And yes, by labeling like Dr. Mike style, I meant exactly what James implied. I corrected my shitty technique. I was always going deep when my feet were way higher on the platform for some reason. Placing them very low changed everything.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference if you're not used to doing it that way, for sure.
Yeah. My favorite thing, and people, when gyms are open, people hit me up and they're like, man, I'm going to be so-and-so, I'm going to be in town and I want to work out. Like, I have trouble hitting my quads. I'm like,
cool.
6 sets later, they're like, I think I'm dying. I'm like, you are dying. Number 2, home training update and some questions. I ordered a barbell, a bunch of plates, and adjustable dumbbells so I can load north of 50 kilos each. Oh,
nice.
They also go as light as 2.5 kilos, so I'm pretty much set to run one meso as usual, except for quads and chest.
Nice.
I do not have a rack and a bench, which I will get if the current situation is continuing for months. I do realize this may sound radical, and I do not necessarily need all that to have productive training, but I figured lifting makes me happy, and this is not putting a dent in my finances, so heck, why not be equipped?
Yeah.
Also, usually by Meso 3, even with 6 days a week frequency, my workouts are getting so long and grueling that by the end, I would much rather have some 2-a-days, but I would hate the hassle of going to the gym twice.
Sure.
Now, I would have the option of 1 home session and 1 gym session for machine work if I chose to, or if this lockdown is really prolonged, 2 home sessions. Okay, chest training. I have a really hard couch cushion that I put on the floor and lie on. It allows my elbows to go all the way back and achieve round with dumbbell pressing. I can touch dumbbells outside my chest before my elbows touch the ground. It's a bit of a pain to pick up and put down. I do have to use lower weight to do this discomfort, but I'll take it instead of no pressing. Flies with a deep stretch are also easy that way. For upper chest, I start with slow eccentric deep deficit push-ups with elevated feet and a 45-pound weight vest. Brutal, but I can obviously do many other types of push-ups. Weighted and body weight. My question is, would it be better to have different higher rep range of dumbbell pressing so I have some exercise variations for later, or seek as much variety as possible for better stimulus? I think that you can just pick 2 or 3 different types of push-ups, most of them being deficit, various hand positions and inclines, and they will take care of your chest training so fucking well that the dumbbell stuff, you can do some dumbbell flies, but I would either save the dumbbell pressing or introduce a little bit of certain kind of dumbbell pressing. Dumbbell pressing, unless you have a bench, tends to work pretty poorly. And also, you might just not have dumbbells heavy enough to make a difference. But I would say the push-ups are such a great chest stimulus, especially if you do them deficit style, that you might not need deficits and myo reps, right? So you do like 25 wide grip push-ups to failure, and then you rest 3 seconds, and you do as many to failure as you can, which is like 5. And you do 5 again, and 5 again, and 5. You're going to fucking blow up. And then some other time in the week, you do a closer grip push-up, and it just fucks you up so much. Good news is upper chest versus lower chest is such a non-issue for months of training. You can just focus on just your chest in general and do no incline work at all during this time. When the gyms open back up, you can do an incline-specific mesocycle. James?
Yeah, totally. I think, I don't think like if you wanted to do like some flies on a day, for example, for maybe some higher reps, that certainly would be good in a variety of ways, but I don't think it's necessary either. I think what Mike's saying is like you can get by with very little during this time. Otherwise, if you can set it up where you have a variety of loads and rep ranges like you would in a normal mesocycle, that would definitely still be a good practice. I think that kind of the idea here is with these at-home workouts is just don't make it unnecessarily complicated. Just do the best with what you got, and if you can modify and kind of keep the same general bones of the program that you were running before, great. Do that. That's great. If you have to just do push-ups and you just have to do like sissy squats and lunges, then just do that too, and that's also fine. The goal for the at-home workouts while you're on lockdown is muscle maintenance for the most part, and that's very easy to do.
Yep. I was still experimenting with quads. I started doing pistol squats.
That's another good one. I keep forgetting to mention. Like those are, it's a tough one to do because of the balance component. But if you can
so he actually hits that up. He says, "But I wonder if I'm getting much out of them, or they're just difficult with not much contribution to hypertrophy. I cannot squat as heavy as I cannot clean overhead press and lower weight back that is heavy enough. I can do that with some weight and put the 45-pound weight vest and have some fun that way. That brings me to what is the effect of the different weight distribution? How different are squatting sets?" Let's say 195-pound barbell, then 150 plus 45-pound vest. Not important, just curious. I would say it's almost completely irrelevant. James?
I think it's the only thing that would really affect is how the mass is distributed across your body in terms of balancing, and then like very minute changes in muscle activation from the center of gravity of the where the weight's being placed on. But other than that, nothing.
And then he says, for my last quad session of this experimental week, I tried heel elevated squats with very light weight and very high rep. That ruined my day properly. Keep doing those. Those are great. I would also do on a chair, especially if someone's holding the chair, front foot elevated, heel, rear foot on the chair, single leg squats with 2 dumbbells, 1 in each hand. And you could even do it just with no dumbbells, but with a weighted vest. Those are super, super fucked up. And you can sort of do them with 20 seconds rest between each leg because you never use, both legs at the same time. Those are really, really intense too. Between those two and just myo repping regular squats with the weight you have, you should be just fine.
Those ones always fuck up my glutes really bad.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to, that's one of those where it's probably an anthropometry thing where it's hard for me to use those as a quad movement because I don't get a ton of quad out of it. And then my ass is like completely destroyed.
Yeah.
I realize how that sounds, but I'm sticking with it.
It says, so I'm able to get some really good at home training. The lack of proper heavy pressing and squatting has made me start slightly higher volume for chest and quads, a bit higher frequency, and staying closer to failure. If these very higher exercises go upwards of 30 reps, is that a mistake? It's not a mistake. It's exactly what you should be doing. I will naturally assess as I go, but I would appreciate your thoughts. I think that's great.
Yeah. And this is for everybody listening. Like, again, the goal for these home workouts is generally just muscle maintenance. And if you're trying to mass during your home workout, this lockdown time, maybe switch to maintenance for a little bit until you go back to the gym. If you are cutting or maintaining, the training goal shifts from whatever you were doing really just to muscle retention at this point, which again is very easy to do. And there's been Dr. Wife over here posted some stuff on Instagram of things you can do to change your programs. I know that some other people at RP have been working on some stuff, and there's probably more on the way. So just keep that in mind. Like muscle maintenance, pretty easy. Modify and adapt. Stay the course the best that you can.
Good. Number 3, before this pandemic forced gyms to close, I was due a massing phase in Meso 1, then I figured this at-home training I just better maintain for a while. Now they have some equipment safe to say I'm good to mass. Yeah, just mass slow. If you feel, here's the thing about massing. If you have the time and you have the weights and you have the technique and the routine to get a good raw stimulus magnitude,
Excuse me. That's it. Sorry.
All that being said, I'm really excited for the upcoming home training templates and check out the level of suffering these workouts will cause. I'm also working on a product that is the super advanced at-home training templates, just for shits and giggles, because I had to make it myself because now myself and Charlie are training at home. So there's a product in the works that may be out within a week. It is an entire block of 8, 10, and then 12 sessions per week. And it's going to suck. So if you want to die, not from coronavirus, but from training, that's a good way to go.
It's going to make your house a nice sweaty meat sauna, I'm sure.
Yeah. Number 4, what are some of your must-read, non-training related books? I know it's a broad question, but I read all nonfiction. If you'd like throwing some fiction, feel free. I got a bunch of books, but I would say that The Blank Slate by Steven Pinker and Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell are 2 books that I think if you read, you'll understand way more about the world than almost everyone.
I also have a Steven Pinker. Enlightenment Now is really great. Also, Better Angels is another book of his that's really good. And this is actually one of my favorite books. I've read it like 100,000 times, and I will keep doing so. It's actually a manga, so it's kind of different. If you're not used to that, you read it kind of right to left instead of left to right. They made a movie, the Tom Cruise, they made a remake of this, but it's a fucking awesome manga if you guys ever want something to read. It's really, 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 really good. And I'm probably going to read it again later today. Now that I pulled it off the bookshelf, I'm like, oh, I forgot about this. Fuck yeah.
What's it called?
All You Need Is Kill. The movie that they kind of made a movie paralleling the story was Edge of Tomorrow. The manga is much better of course it is, but it really is much better. It's really good.
Damn. Fucking nerd.
Mm-hmm. I have plenty of comic book graphic novel recommendations if you guys want.
All right. Thomas Jankowski says, "Hi docs, I know you're both coping just fine, so fuck the well wishes. I love it."
Yep.
Just kidding. Clearly, maybe a little joke and some humor is more useful than online good vibes anyway. The joke was highly appreciated, Thomas.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Okay, as someone who's been lifting for over 10 years, fucking around for a few of them, I've focused for a period, I'm starting to question my current mass. I feel like the volume I need to effectively go is just really high. I started out this current block after finishing up blocks maintenance and then cut. Week 1 had me pretty sore from just 2 sets for most exercises. Push-pull legs repeating total 10 to 16 on most body parts. But weeks 3 and 4 and subsequently upping my food to try to make the scale go up, I was essentially doubling that volume, more in some, and feeling barely any soreness, maybe a minimal pump at best. Do you think I was getting more sore at the start because my calories were lower, lowering my MAV, but potentially lower my adaptations too? I don't think that's the case. Or is it just because I'm experienced that my body gets accustomed to high volumes very quickly? Maybe. And if I'm getting accustomed to it, am I still growing, or do I have to hammer the volume more so long as I'm recovering, of course? So my question is, how close to failure are you going? Because if you're not getting closer and closer to failure as you go weeks, you can add lots of volume and still not get sore. But if you're increasing the weight on the bar or increasing the reps, and you're going closer and closer to failure every week, generally you tend to get very, very sore continually because you're increasing the per set stimulus every single time. So I think that's worth a mention. Yeah, James.
Yeah, definitely. And just I know there's more to the question. We'll probably touch on this, but just at first glance, to me, that sounds kind of like two things come to mind right off the top of my head. Is A, you might be experiencing some staleness on some of the movements that you're using. Maybe it's time for to swap out some new movements. Or two, you might just be due for a resensitization phase all around. I mean, like when you're really not getting pumps and kind of flat like that, and your volumes just seem to be infinite, and that's just like a common either time to swap out new movements or time to take a low volume phase and recuperate a little bit.
Yeah, the low volume phase might be a real good idea. I know this is overthinking to your extent, but I think it makes for good theoretical discussion. On top of that, these sessions have gone from 45 minutes to 90 minutes real quick. I've tried a super giant alternating set, non-competing muscle groups, but even though I'm in decent shape, I don't get too gassed. I know this might be a compromise. It is. But are there any solutions to try to reduce this time? The only thing you can think of is targeting one muscle group for each meso and hammering that with volume whilst keeping the others at maintenance. Good idea. A few years back, I did nothing but myo reps, and I just don't think long-term strategy that works. It doesn't. I stopped myself short of using the word hack because it's really not what I'm trying to do, just trying to think practically. Thanks so much, guys. Also, I'm aware that those questions don't apply right now. We've got nothing but time, but for the future reference, theoretical discussion purposes, perhaps. Yeah, so one thing you do is go closer to failure. That always works. Another thing you can do is practice which rep ranges you're targeting and maybe target the ones that get you more fucked up and target less of the ones that don't. And also consider splitting your training into multiple sessions per day. I think it's some level of advancement that just works better. Also think of mind-muscle connection and technique and make sure you're really getting a lot out of every exercise. But especially if you're not a very fast twitch individual, especially if you're a slower twitch, sometimes the volume of work it takes to get bigger is really insane, and it sort of keeps growing. And in that case, it's just genetics, and you have to make some trade-offs. James?
Yeah, I agree with all those points. And Tom, you already kind of touched on this, but this is kind of the classic intermediate to advanced conundrum is that you might just need to do specialization phases from this point on. Like you might not be able to do, maybe I missed it, or maybe he said otherwise, but if you're doing a whole body mass, that just might be off the table at this point. Mm-hmm. You might just be accruing too much systemic fatigue from doing all the other stuff to really get a super good growth stimulus for any one particular thing. So I would say it might be worth thinking about putting, non-prioritized muscle groups at MV and then really training the ones that you want really, really hard. So I'm actually doing that right now. I finished my cut. We got back from Thailand. I took like a 1 week of like a little bit of cutting, and I just started my arms and delts focused mass. That means basically chest, back, legs are on MV, and god damn, does that feel good. Do you know how good it feels to not have to train legs hard? Oh my God, I haven't done this in years.
I don't even remember what that feels
Oh my God, I just do arms every day. Arms and delts every day, baby. I'm on the ultimate bro split. My time has come, finally. But yeah, so you're probably in a similar situation, and you're going to probably have to start thinking about doing that more and more.
Brandon Armstrong says, so I have a question about home training due to that. Gotcha. I'm just kidding.
No.
I'm sure you guys have already answered any question about training specifically during this time period that I'll soon learn answers anyway. However, I do want to get you guys' thoughts for when I do re-enter the gym. What would be best to buy a crowbar or just smash the glass of the rock? Gotcha again. I'm not planning.
God damn it! Ask a real question.
Shitty jokes aside, I was 2 days shy of the end of massing phase when my gym got closed until the quarantine here in Spain lifts. I will not be able to. Okay, I lied. That was the last one I said.
Jesus Christ.
So I have a plan.
You're banned.
So I have a plan to do what I can at my very small flat that involves extremely limited options for legs and pushing and nothing for pull until I can get some bands in eating at maintenance. However, when the quarantine is over, how would you guys recommend I structure my re-entry lifting? Easing back in is the obvious answer, correct. But where do I go after that? You just keep easing until it's getting harder
slowly.
And harder and harder.
Yeah.
That's it. I was coming off a mass phase when my gym closed down with a plan to do a maintenance phase followed by a 10-week strength block / mini cuts before peaking and eventually testing, but I'll not be able to do that now. My current plan for re-entry training is to mass again for 2 or 3 weeks to try to regain what muscle I may lose. Don't do that. And allow for strength to return to similar levels as before, then a maintenance phase. I wouldn't do that.
No.
I would do a maintenance phase for like 8 weeks, and you will gain muscle and lose fat at the same time because your lifting is so much more intense. It accomplishes both massing and maintaining.
And you'll slowly be regaining any lost muscle at that point too. So yeah, you're good.
After that, I plan to start my strength block and have a couple mini cuts during time to get rid of extra fat by the end of this training cycle and eventually start bulking out. It's totally fine. I'm not too sure about this plan. I'm hoping you guys can help steer me in the right direction. I don't know how long it would be good enough for regaining muscle and strength, provided that the quarantine here in Spain ends about mid-April or early May, hopefully not any later. Yeah. So, let's ease in. So don't eat at surplus, eat at maintenance the entire like sort of 8 weeks. And then start with like 1 or 2 sets of shit. And if you get a little sore, get a little pump. Add 1 or 2 sets, get a little sore, get a little pump. Keep doing that until you're back to normal volumes. And then in a couple weeks after doing normal volumes, you'll be as muscular as ever. And that'll be that.
Yeah, and just keep in mind, like your volume landmarks have shifted as a result of this time, right? So when you're training really hard for a long time, they kind of shift to the right, meaning they go up, 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 up. You got to keep doing more and more. At least your MEV does more distinctly, and your MRV, as you gain work capacity and recovery ability, tends to do a little bit of that over time. But when you take time off, they shift the other direction, right? As you become increasingly sensitized to training, and your work capacity goes down as a result of not doing a whole lot, right? So keep in mind, you can't use the same numbers that you had been using for the last several months or mesos or blocks. You're going to have to shift all of those things down very, very distinctly. So you might only be doing, 1 or 2 sets per muscle group per session when you come back. And that might only go up by 1 set, or maybe not even. It might just go up by more reps the next time you come and lift because you have taken a lot of time off. So just don't assume that you're going to go back to the same numbers that you had been using. Your numbers have shifted down drastically, and you're going to have to progress accordingly.
Ellie Paulin says, hey guys, 2 quick questions. I've been training for 4 months. To which degree should a beginner attempt to diet priorities exposed in Renaissance Diet 2.0? I think it covers that in the Renaissance Diet 2.0. So I think you should get your calories in order, your protein in order, and eat 4 to 6 balanced, healthy meals per day and not worry about much of anything else.
Yeah, and even sometimes for a beginner, it's more about just like developing good habits, right? Like weighing yourself regularly, hydrating regularly, making sure that your meals have protein in it and vegetables and it's like some good carb sources. Like those kind of habits go a long way. And then you kind of start adding on things like, okay, I'm going to think about how many calories or how many protein. Like those are things you can start tacking on as you go. But I think in the beginning, it's more about developing good habits.
Yeah, at least for healthy meals centered around protein and some good carbs, veggies, fruits.
And like weighing yourself and doing those types of like just the kind of just stuff that you're going to need to do later on anyway.
Next question is it detrimental in the long run for vegans to obtain most of their protein intake from soy and pea protein isolate shakes, particularly as they potentially contain copper or metal chips, lubricants, and cleaning or sanitizing agents coming from the extracting apparatus? I have no idea. I know certainly no studies have been conducted on long-term stuff. I'm not even sure how many studies have been conducted on the cleaning and sanitizing agents. I would say that the meat you get at the store maybe has all that on the meat. So I don't think it's almost certainly not an issue, but I don't know specifically. So it's something to look into.
Should I ask Mel?
Yeah, you can.
Mel, do you want a vegan-related question?
Sure.
Okay, so is it detrimental in the long run for vegans to obtain most of their protein intake from soy and pea protein isolate shakes, particularly as they potentially contain copper or metal chips, lubricants, and cleaning and sanitizing agents coming from the extracting apparatus?
I think that getting most of your protein from protein powder in any situation, vegan or omnivore, is probably a really bad idea. I'd also say to be careful about taking in more than 25% of your daily protein is soy, and I would encourage them to look for more whole food options, and if they're really set on whole foods, just when they're cutting, move to like some tofu and fake meat options, and then go back to whole foods without maintenance.
All right, let's see how well I remembered all that. So Mel said, vegan, omnivore, or otherwise, it's probably not great to get most of your protein from powdered sources. It's probably not in your best interest to get more than 25% of your daily protein from soy. We just don't know. You should probably think about trying to get more whole food sources, and I kind of forgot the last one.
If they're really set on, I'm wondering why they want to get all their protein from powders.
Well, we don't know. So,
Okay.
But that seems to be a pretty reasonable explanation for no. If they're
cutting and having go with like corn, fake meats, and soy and stuff like that, and nutritional yeast until they're on it.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's
Are you
good.
going to say that?
I think, did you hear that, Mike? Or could you?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I can hear it.
Okay.
Mark Conway says, greetings from Newcastle upon Tyne, indoors, Mike and James.
Such weird verbiage.
Yep. Thanks again for answering last week's question. I'll be sure to relay the numerous benefits of female physique templates to my girlfriend to ensure the RP empire continues to grow. Also, thanks, James, for your advice on the Rogaine. I just started using it myself, so hopefully
cool.
I'll be able to delay the inevitable toilet seat bird's nest. If not, I will consider using finasteride, as it seems to be safe for the vast majority of people. Out of interest, is this something you have or would consider using yourself if your balding reoccurred, or is Rogaine as far as you're willing to go?
Yeah, so I think keep in mind you might have to do like a weird, baldy selfie to make sure that it's working. Because some people it doesn't work. It works for like 80% of people. For me, I had to actually take pictures of my head to make sure that it was working and confirm, and it did. So hopefully you'll be in the same situation. I honestly, I don't know what finasteride is. I'm guessing that's like Propecia, right? Or I have no idea, to be honest. So if I'm assuming it's Propecia, I could be totally wrong on that. I have never actually looked into it. Honestly, I stopped looking into this because the Rogaine was working for now, and it's one of those things. At some point, like for me personally, I feel like once the Rogaine's not cutting it anymore, then it's like you just got to make peace with it at some point. That's kind of my take on it. I don't know. I haven't really looked into it. I might actually look into it more now that you bring it up.
Yeah. No clue. Next question from Mark is actually pretty short. This week's question relates to training in our ever-changing viral world. I was very fortunate to have completed the final week of the 5-day male physique template in a 10 to 20 rep phase before my gym closed. This was
Nice.
actually my deload. Mike, I just listened to all the great info you put out in the RP podcast about training at home during isolation. Based on this, I'm devising a high-volume program solely structured around my trusty 9-kilogram dumbbells. My questions to both of you are, should I take it easy this week in an attempt to emulate my deload using the dumbbells as best I can, or should I start the high-volume program this week since the majority of loads are going to be significantly lighter? The easy answer is take it easy because it's a fucking deload week. Mm-hmm. Use the deload to deload. Don't get into crazy high volumes. Remember, the dumbbells intelligently planned, like we described in the RP podcast. You can fuck yourself into the moon. So, yeah, don't just jump the gun. Go easy.
That sounds like a kinky adult film. Fuck yourself into the moon.
I love the moon. It is so plain and made of cheese.
I'm imagining like a weird astronaut theme.
I had a really astronaut.
Even better.
Come on, that was easy.
Oh, nice.
I had a good. I was leaving Charlie's house earlier after training, and I had a good. Like a European superhero, because Charlie helped me. I was really pretty warm outside, and I had to tie my jacket around my shoulder. So Charlie showed me how to do that, and I looked like I had a cape. And he's like, "Look, you look like a superhero." And I was like, "Oh yeah, but like a European superhero, not something like really out there and violent like Superman was taking justice into his own hands. It's like more of a hero that kind of it helped you figure out your own arrangements and really peace through negotiation, not like stupid American like G.I. Joe." It was like
G.I. Joe's a good like Euro like perception of what Americans think as hero.
Yeah, Superman, he just basically destroys with force, and he's red, white, and blue. Got it. That's like American military, same thing.
They're actually doing, I think the next animated movie they're doing is Red Son, which I really liked that series. Because it starts off, you kind of think like, oh man, like the socialist guys are like always better than the like capitalist guys. But then at the end, like it kind of comes full circle and you're like,
yeah. Thank you both in advance for your wisdom. Personally, I'm looking forward to making the most of the situation and get to work from home, spend more time with my partner and talking with friends. Not too close, I hope. Game and watching classic Marvel cartoons on Disney Plus. Stay safe, and I hope both you and your family have a good Corona. All the best, Mark. I think
have a good Corona. That's a funny way of phrasing.
My Corona. He was really prescient to that nice young man that wrote that song.
Mel and I are still like many people who are like stupid, and so like I subscribe to ESPN Plus and Mel subscribes to Hulu Plus. Neither of us subscribe to the fucking Disney Plus, which covers all of them. Fuck.
There you go.
I'm gonna do it sooner or later.
Oh, I think we literally subscribe to Disney Plus, but we also subscribe to Hulu on a different account. It's really bad.
Do you? So it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, it's so much, it's not that much effort, but the thought of like, oh, I got to figure out how to cancel this one and like call, fuck, I don't, yes.
Enjoy my money economy. Zach Drawl, back from dealing the substance after which he is named, says, hello, friends, with the Kung Flu going around. That's pretty good. I've heard that one.
I've heard that's like not, don't get me wrong, I'm not into the over PC camp, but I've heard that is like now a very like thumbs down way of phrasing it.
Oh, yeah. Trump made the usual ridiculous remark. He's like, the Chinese virus. And someone's like, isn't that racist? He's like, no, not at all. It came from China. It's a Chinese virus. Like, yeah, asshole, your TV came from China too. We don't call the Chinese TV, you dumb asshole.
Dude, you can't like, it's like Trump's immune to criticism at this point. Like he could just...
He's too fucking retarded.
He just says whatever, and everyone's like, whatever.
Okay.
He just says things that are like wrong or insensitive, and everyone's just like, ah.
Yeah. Good to have him leading during this.
Yeah, great. So great.
All right. With the Kung Flu going around, our state is shut down. So as many of you have done, I set up a home gym. I've also done the motorcycle that has 2-a-day training up frequency. Yahoo. I know added frequency in general is good, but would it also follow to reason that high frequency could possibly aid in muscle retention at a deficit? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
One problem I'm running into is the estimated MEV because soreness has all but disappeared with the added frequency. What are your thoughts? Well, you're going to go on pump and the perception of muscle disruption. And it also, if you're not getting super sore, then you can probably do more. Your MEV will be higher than you think.
I think for some of these, like, and you know, that seems to be the topic of this week's webinar is at-home workouts. But I think like if you can get a pump and a burn going, you're probably in a good spot. Right, even if you're not getting super sore, like chase the pump, chase the burn. If you get that, you're probably you're doing probably doing pretty good.
Yeah. And if after the workout your muscles feel like fucked, you're good. Like if after a quad workout at home you can run up the stairs and not feel a thing, you just keep training. If after a quad workout, like 2 days from there or 1 day, you don't feel any DOMs, but trying to get up the stairs like 15 minutes after, you're like, holy shit, my legs don't work. That's a good sign.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Muscle disruption locally. Some added info. I'm just coming off a deload and diet break as I went from 250 to 230.
Nice.
This is likely the last leg of the diet before I get abbed up. I figure my MEV has risen due to that having been a deficit for a bit anyway. Yep, my MEV is 8 to 11 sets in general. I started this meso at 12, and I'm now 14 with literally no soreness. Pumps are suitable. I am pushing it. Before I get an eyebrow from my boy James, my form is good. All right.
My man, he knew it was coming.
So, right. So says you, Zach Drawl. Your form's probably shit, bro. Just kidding.
Still not good enough. Still not. Nope. Still form. Yeah. I mean, I think like in these cases too, like if the exercise variants that you're using for your at-home workouts, just kind of, you know, you can get through it, but it's not really disruptive. Like Mike was talking about earlier, think about adding more reps, adding more sets, shortening rest times, adding mind-muscle connection, like being a little bit more conscientious of those things. Those are all perfectly acceptable, especially like when you're using something like, you know, like a squat, like an unloaded squat variation. Like you might have to do a fuckload of them to really get something out of it. And you probably can't use your same base MEV numbers that you would normally use in a gym situation where all things are high SFR or at least higher than home workout. Those might not be quite as applicable. It might be a good like kind of reference point, but you might have to shift those up a little bit just because the exercises that you're doing just aren't as stimulative.
All right. Let's go to the tubes.
Let's do it.
Share. Let us do the random YouTube walk. All right. Samuel Turner says, would doing overhead press before incline bench increase chest stimulation as the delts and triceps are already tired? It would not, and here's why. Relatively speaking, the chest EMG would be very high, which is cool, and it would make you think, oh, the chest is being stimulated, because the chest has to start getting activated relatively soon because the delts and triceps are already tired. The problem is your repetitions would drop so much that the amount of total quality per set chest stimulus declines. So if you really want to fuck the chest up with an exercise that's really specific to it, train the chest first. And potentially, if you're really concerned with a ton of fatigue from an exercise like incline press, you can get the same amount of chest activation and stimulus by training a fly exercise first And then the chest is a limiting factor on all the other stuff afterwards. So those are the two options. I would not train a muscle to become a limiting factor, so the other muscles has to rely on it. Yes, that's actually how it works. So relatively speaking, your chest is more active, but it's active for like 6 reps versus like 10, which sucks. James?
Yeah, I agree totally.
Not a real one, but Omne Obstat says, shelter in place is just another word for quarantine. Well, I guess it was a comment on our video. Not a question.
Yeah, I mean,
It's true.
it's true. Totally. Yeah.
All right. Rubius Hagrid, what a sweet name. And he looks like a cool person. Thoughts on daily lunch meat as protein source: sliced turkey, chicken, no nitrates and preservatives? Well, fuck, man, if it has no nitrate and preservatives, it's A-okay with me, James.
Yeah, I mean, like generally, I would say like heavily processed meats probably wouldn't be the most ideal choice as your number one. But if it's just like literally just sliced turkey and chicken, like, yeah, it's the same as getting chicken or turkey. So go for it. That's fine.
All right, let's take Muhammad's question and be done with it.
Be done with it.
Mohammad Nader says, hey, docs, I have a few questions if you don't mind. Number one, you guys mentioned that it might be useful to go from MEV to MRV even on a cut, since it can cause satellite cell proliferation. I think, yeah, maybe, which should translate to more growth in the next massing phase. How likely is this to happen? No clue.
It's feasible, but we don't.
50-50.
Yeah, it's a feasible thing that could happen. We just don't really know what the
But
actual
remember, so the MRV comes to you anyway on a cut.
right.
So you will end up doing this anyway.
So it might be. So you could also. It might be to that point, right? If you have already done years of really, really productive massing, right? You might have already tapped into a lot of those type of gains where when you switch to cut and MRV comes to you, that may not be enough stimulus anymore to actually trigger things like satellite cell proliferation because it's so low, so much lower than what you could be doing on a mass. So it goes both ways. But I think as like an intermediate, that option is feasible. As an advanced, probably not.
Yeah, because do your best efforts aside, you simply won't be able to produce the raw stimulus magnitude necessary. Number two, how should a powerlifter decide between a strength phase or a hypertrophy phase, assuming there's no competition soon? And does the decision differ between different experience levels? And do taller powerlifters need more hypertrophy phases since they're going to have to move the bar more distance, which requires more muscle? Thanks for the great work. So really the only answer here is a fairly simple one, or the main answer is how you stack up in your weight class, and do you anthropometrically have the desire and or the ability to move up a weight class or down a weight class? So for example, if you are jacked to all shit, and you're one of the most jacked guys in your weight class, but you've done a ton of hypertrophy work to get there, but neurally you're not as strong as some of the other guys and just thus not as strong. Yeah, you're not going to do a ton of hypertrophy work. For example, a good one is Amit Sapir. You guys might remember him. I think he's still around. He's an IFBB pro bodybuilder. He's fucking enormous. And then he transitioned to powerlifting and ended up breaking the all-time squat record a whole bunch at 181 and 198. But he didn't do any hypertrophy work at all. He actually just did exclusively strength work for years and years until he broke the records because he had all the muscle he would never need. He was over-muscled for his class. His mobility wasn't even good, and the specificity was all wrong, right? So contrast that with, like, let's take your example of a taller powerlifter. Let's say you're like, assume you're not from the United States. Let's say you're like a meter 90 and you weigh like 75 kilos and you're like, yeah, I'm going to do a bunch of strength phases. Like, okay, you're good luck never being competitive. Like, you need to mass up for sure. So then you need to do 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 hypertrophy to strength. So it's really all, and then I'll kick it off to James because this is his area. To wrap it up, it's needs analysis based. Where are you and what do you need to get where you want to go?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think the needs analysis will really tell you like where you stack up relative to your competitors at your weight class. So if, for example, if you're somebody who struggles to make weight, right, where it's like a legit chore and you really have to do a really good job with your recomping and stuff because you drop a lot to get that weigh in, you probably don't want to do a ton of hypertrophy work. Otherwise, it's going to push you up and over into that next weight class potentially. And so you might choose a lot of strength. On the other hand, if you are kind of average body comp or maybe even a little bit less on the LBM side than some of the people that you compete against, then that you could make a very strong case and say, hey, strength training is fine. It's powerlifting. Like getting strong is always a good idea, but you probably would benefit more in the long term from putting on some more muscle mass and filling out your weight class a little bit more. So I think Mike nailed that one. All right. Well,
That's it.
We're going to wrap
One
this
more
one up.
reminder.
Yeah, one more reminder, folks. I'm going to start doing another series. I don't know if it's going to be weekly or maybe every other week, or we'll figure that out as we go. But it's going to be just like Dr. James talks on sports, and I'll do some training programs on the fly for you guys. So if you guys have some really sports specific, like that last one from what was that guy's name? Something Muhammad, I believe. If you have
Muhammad Nader.
Muhammad Nader, yeah. If you have questions like that, like really, really sports specific ones about, whether it's like rugby or soccer, powerlifting, whatever, you can just go ahead and pop them into this video's comments. And if you want to label them for me specifically, that would be awesome. And then I will compile those and I'll have some fun stuff to do. If you guys have some interesting training scenarios, like, hey, I got a competition coming up in 6 months and I have some weird restrictions. I have this athlete, I'm not really sure what to do or how much time I should be doing GPP versus SPP stuff. Those are all perfect prime kind of stuff for that talk. So go ahead and pop those in the comments section. If you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe to the RP feed. Dr. Mike's been going hard on the RP videos lately. I see you. I see your presence. Fucking hell, man.
Tons of them. Scott and I are on a fucking ravage. Still recording a ton, and we're going to have videos out tomorrow, so watch for them because there'll be cool training videos on RP.
Yeah, so comment below. Make sure you guys subscribe, and then we will be back for next week's weekly webinar as normal. So we'll talk to you next time.
Peace, homies.